Caleb Thorne first noticed the wrist before anything else. Pale skin rubbed raw where rope had bitten deep, and beneath it a pulse, still fighting like it hadn't been told to quit yet. Summer heat pressed down on Tombstone before the day even woke up, the kind of heat that makes a man tired just breathing. Caleb was 48, a rancher who lived far enough from town that other people's problems usually lost interest before reaching his fence. That morning, they didn't. Trouble didn't arrive on horseback or with shouting. It came quiet, on a wagon. One wheel sunk, crooked in the dust, no driver, no fresh tracks. Just a mule tied off, chewing slow like it had been standing there all night. The canvas cover was gone. In its place, a white blanket pulled tight, the way you cover something when you don't want the sun asking questions. Caleb stood there holding his coffee, letting it cool without realizing, listening. No wind, no birds, just the faint leather creak from the mule and a shallow breath under the cloth that barely counted as life. There was a note tied into the rope at the tailgate. Cheap paper. Bold ink. 2 words pressed hard enough to burn. Paid. Delivered. No name. No sender. Just a smudged seal and a dark stain that looked like sweat. Or fear. Caleb hadn't ordered anything. Hadn't paid anyone for a favor. Not since the day he buried his wife and decided the world could keep its distance. He pulled the blanket back. A young woman lay curled like she'd tried to disappear into herself. Dirt in her hair, bruises blooming where hands had held too tight, wrists tied careless, not to restrain, but to reduce. Cargo. Her eyes fluttered open and locked onto his face, like she'd already met death, and decided this was just another version of it. "You paid for me," she said hoarse. "Now do it." Wisp. Caleb didn't flinch. "I didn't buy you," he said low, "and I don't take what ain't freely gin." Her eyes hardened. That scared her more. No rules meant no mercy. "Then don't send me back," she whispered, chin trembling once before she forced it still. Caleb cut the rope careful, lifted her without asking, and carried her inside like she mattered. He set water nearby and stepped back, giving space. She watched him like distance was armor. Outside, Caleb studied the wagon. Tracks too clean, too deliberate, like it had been placed, not driven. On the tailgate, pressed into the wood, a symbol. Simple, familiar. His fingers shook once. He'd seen that mark before. Last time, he'd been standing beside a grave. He looked toward the cabin window. The girl was watching. Waiting. In town, men like Silas Crow didn't send gifts. They sent warnings. And this one had his name on it, whether he liked it or not. Caleb sat at the table with the notes spread flat. The cabin feeling smaller than it ever had. Eliza, he'd learned her name without her saying it, lay in the back room, eyes open more than closed. He stepped into the doorway. "I'm going into town," he said gently. "I'm coming back." Her shoulders tightened. "If you go, they'll hear." Caleb nodded. "That's why I'm going." He left her a lantern, then removed the bullets. Left chalk on the table, something small, something that said you still have a choice. Then he rode. The shipping yard smelled like hay and money. The clerk smiled like it was part of the job. Caleb laid the note down. "You recognize the seal?" The clerk shrugged until Caleb leaned in just enough. The ledger opened. Supplies. Then another line added under the same payment. "Special delivery. No description." "Paw. That doesn't happen by accident," the clerk muttered. Caleb didn't ask who did it. He already knew who signed it. A red scarf. Friends in the sheriff's office. Caleb left. Next stop was the justice of the peace. "Old man. Ink-stained hands. I need a marriage certificate." The justice studied him. "She better agree." Caleb nodded. "She's been treated like property. I'm trying to make her untouchable." Silence stretched. "Finally, bring her tomorrow. Bring a witness." Caleb rode back hard. Eliza stood in the doorway when he returned, lantern shaking. "They changed the paperwork," he told her. "But there's a way to cut their hands off," he explained. Paper wasn't magic, but it bought time. It forced daylight. After that, he added softly, "You choose." She stared like disbelief was all she had left. You don't even know me. I know what they did, he said. And I know what they'll do if you're still a line in a book. A sound came from the fence. Leather shifting. Someone listening. Caleb moved without hurry. Stay inside, he said. Lock the door. The man at the fence wore a red scarf and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Heard something showed up, he said. Caleb answered with one clean punch. Rope followed. The man confessed fast. Silas Crow. Caleb tied him where everyone could see. You're safe, Caleb told Eliza. She swallowed. For how long? Caleb looked at the road. Long enough. They rode for Tucson at sunset, dust hanging behind them like a warning. The witness rode bound, alive, and visible. In Tucson, eyes followed. A deputy stepped out smiling wrong. You're a long way from home. His gaze slid to Eliza. Who's this? My wife, Caleb said flat. The deputy raised a brow. Funny, I got a telegram. Buyer claims fraud. Hold the rancher. Pass, Caleb pointed to the bound man. Start with him. The deputy hesitated. Too many deputies appeared too fast. Caleb felt the gate closing. He leaned toward Eliza. When I whistle, she nodded. Hide. When the deputy moved, Caleb whistled sharp. Eliza slipped away clean. The crowd noticed. Someone blocked the deputy. Questions started. Crow's name was spoken out loud. That mattered. Eliza stepped back into view, voice steady despite the shake in her hands. I was left tied under a blanket. I married him because I wanted to live. Pause. The deputy tried to twist it. Caleb held up the certificate. This as she chose. The crowd leaned in. Daylight did its work. They walked to the courthouse together, not running, just walking. By nightfall, the witness was talking, Crow's name echoing where it never had before. They rode out after dark. Eliza looked at the ranch ahead. I decided to stay, she said. Smee, Caleb nodded once. Sometimes the West wasn't about guns. Sometimes it was about standing still long enough for the truth to catch up. When cruelty shows up at your fence, the only real question is what you do next. The night didn't end clean just because Tucson let them leave. It rarely does. Caleb felt it in the way the desert stayed too quiet, like it was listening. They rode without talking much, hooves steady, breath measured, the kind of silence that comes after a storm you know isn't finished yet. Eliza kept her eyes forward, hands firm on the reins. She wasn't shaking anymore, but she wasn't relaxed either. There's a difference between peace and resolve, and she was living in the second one now. They made camp where the rocks broke the wind, and the moon couldn't see everything. Caleb set the fire low. No stories, no comfort lies. Just war, dry bread, and the truth sitting between them. Pause. Finally spoke. Crow won't stop. It wasn't fear. It was certainty. Caleb nodded. Men like him never stop. They just change shape. He watched the fire like it might answer back. What they hate most isn't losing money. It's losing control in front of witnesses. Eliza stared into the flames. He'll come after you. Whis, Caleb shrugged. He already has. Then he added softer. But now he has to do it loud. That earned a breath from her that almost sounded like a laugh. Almost. She looked at him then, really looked. You didn't have to do any of this. Caleb met her eyes. That's true. But if I hadn't, I'd still be the man who stood quiet the last time it mattered. They rode again before dawn. The sky turned pale the way it does right before the world remembers how to breathe. When the ranch came into view, Eliza slowed. She half expected it to be burned, broken, taken. It stood the same. Fence straight, barn quiet, but the land felt different, watched, claimed. Caleb dismounted first, scanning the dust. Tracks, fresh, more than one. Paw! He didn't reach for his gun. He reached for his voice. We're home, he said evenly, loud enough for anyone listening to hear. If you've got business, step out. The air held, then a shape moved near the fence. Another man. Not Crow. Older? Careful. A man who'd learned how to survive other men's messes. Message, the stranger said. Crow wants you to know this ain't over. Caleb nodded. It never is. The man hesitated, eyes flicking to Eliza. He also wants you to know Tucson was a surprise. Aw, that's good, Caleb said. Surprises mean he's thinking. The man frowned, like that wasn't the answer he'd expected. You're not scared? Eliza spoke before Caleb could. We're done being quiet. Her voice didn't shake. The messenger studied her, then tipped his hat and backed away. He left without dust or drama. That mattered. When the sun finally climbed, Eliza stepped onto the porch and breathed deep. For the first time, the air didn't feel borrowed. Caleb stood beside her, not touching, not crowding. This doesn't lock you in, he said. Paper or no paper. She nodded. I know. Pa. Then she added, but today I stay. Somewhere far off, a horse moved. Somewhere closer, the wind shifted. Crow would come again. Maybe with badges. Maybe with lies. But now there was daylight, witnesses, and a woman who no longer believed she was something to be owned. And that kind of change, that travels faster than fear. If this road keeps going, and it will, the next turn won't be quiet.